Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tony Mancini, and welcome to the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee. It's December the 2nd, and it's about 4 minutes after 1. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I would like to, first of all, acknowledge that we're on Mi'kma'ki, the territory and ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of peace and friendship treaties between the Mi'kmaq Nation and the Crown, dating back to 1725. In Nova Scotia, we recognize that we are all treaty people. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from November the 4th. Approved, put forward by Councillor Cleary, second by Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? Thank you. We have approved minutes. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, there have not been any deletions prior to this latest agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair. There is no proposed addition or deletion to today's meeting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there moved by Councillor Cleary? Second by Councillor Gammon. All those in favor? Great. We now have an agenda. Business arising out of the minutes? Seeing none, call for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing none. There are no motions of rescission or reconsideration, consideration of deferred business or none, and notice of table matters. Madam Clerk, are there any correspondence?
There is one correspondence was received and circulated to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any petitions? Seeing none, we come to the presentation. 10.3.1, the Honourable Tim Holman, Minister of Environment and Government of Nova Scotia. Minister, well, welcome. Welcome to you and your team. We are very happy to have you here today. As you know, this committee is the Environment Committee, and so we've been very excited and paying close attention to once the new government arrived and you were appointed, and we were very encouraged by your plan. So the invitation today was for you to share your plan, and we look forward to hearing what is your plan of attack going to be to protect the environment and address climate change. As you know, we're in the middle of our budget right now, and it's been proposed to put a tax increase, and a percentage of the tax increase is going to go to our fight to the climate change. And so we are very interested in hearing you today. So we welcome you. If you wouldn't mind introducing who's with you today, Minister, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to my HRM colleagues. So nice to see everyone. Thank you for all the work you do for the residents of HRM. So I am Minister Timothy Holman, also MLA for Dartmouth East. Along with me here today, I've brought members of my senior leadership team from the Department of Environment and Climate Change. To my left, we have the Executive Director of our Climate Change Unit, Ms. Nancy Rondo. To my further left, we have, hey, how are you? We have Ms. Brianna Faulkner, who's my principal advisor. To my right, we have Deputy Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and also Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Mr. Scott Farmer, and our Executive Director for Policy, Ms. Lori Roberts. So I've come prepared. If there's anything I can't answer in depth, certainly my senior leadership team should be able to provide you some clarity. I'm absolutely thrilled to be with you here today. Many of you here at Council know me personally. You know I have the utmost respect for the work that you do for our residents. Quite frankly, in terms of my leadership approach at a local level as an MLA, you are a key component in the governance of our beautiful province. And certainly, you know, I want you to know I appreciate all the work that you do. Certainly my personal relationship with Councillor Mancini, you know, there's a lot of great work that can be accomplished when the province and our municipal units are able to work together. And there's many opportunities I know moving forward we'll have that. So again, thank you for the invitation. You know, I just want to take a moment and highlight what we've done in the first 3 months. When you're given an opportunity that I've been given by the Premier of Nova Scotia, I really took the bull by the horns, and I was fortunate to be able to get a piece of legislation through our House of Assembly with the consent of all 55 MLAs. Now, that's not to say that concerns weren't raised, but at the end of the day, every single MLA in that legislature voted in favor for the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. This piece of legislation is modeled after legislation that was brought in the mid-2000s by a former environment minister by the name of Mark Parent, and that bill was called the Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act, which legislated 25 very strong targets. That piece of legislation allowed Nova Scotia to become a leader in environmental stewardship, in sustainable prosperity. Since 2007, however, there's been some very dramatic changes to our climate, and that's not lost on me. As you know, when I was first elected as an MLA, the first thing my oldest child told me was, "Dad, get us off coal." And so we know the next generation, it's a priority to them. As an elected official, I want my colleagues at HRM to know it is a top priority, and that is why, working with my senior leadership team, we were able to put forward 28 goals that I believe are the boldest and most ambitious goals in Canada. So much so, I've heard some really positive feedback from the federal government on what we call EGCRA, the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. These goals have aggressive greenhouse gas reduction targets, 53% below 2005 levels by 2030, getting us off coal by 2030. We are to have 80% renewable energy by 2030. 20% of our land, is to be preserved. Land and water is to be preserved by 2030. These are bold, ambitious targets, and the circles I have under my eyes, these are well earned, because when you put goals like this into legislation, it's now work. We're locked in. And we did that we did this for the next generation. We did this we know we're at a tipping point. We know we're at a moment in our history where bold action is required, and that's why we did that. And so now we get to work. And for me, getting to work means working with you, working with Nova Scotians to ensure we achieve these objectives. Now, I just outlined a handful out of the 28. These goals are comprehensive, impacting all levels of government provincially, impacting our municipalities, impacting our businesses. And these impacts will be very positive as we work towards achieving these goals. We all, I think, would recognize that tackling climate change, mitigating its effects, adapting to its realities requires an all-hands-on-deck approach. And anyone that's gotten to know me over the years, whether as an elected official or prior to that as what I'd like to say, a humble classroom teacher, I have a collaborative style. And I want to signal that to you right from the get-go, is that when I say all hands on deck, I want to work with you to ensure we achieve the bold, ambitious plans that we have provincially, and I know the bold, ambitious plans that you have developed in Halifax 2050 in your investment plan. And one of the things, the 3 months being in this position, I've observed is the convergence that we're witnessing, all of us, between innovation and opportunity. And you can really feel that. While there is a lot of concerns, and rightly so, about the future, there's also a lot of optimism. And as a political leader, I want to ensure that we stoke those flames of optimism, especially for the next generation of Nova Scotians and Canadians. We owe it to them. There's nothing more disheartening for me to see a young person, feeling that climate anxiety. To some degree, I certainly understand it. and I understand why they feel that sense of urgency, but we as leaders, we as adults need to inspire them that we are taking the necessary steps to ensure mitigation and adaptation as we move forward. And certainly, you know, my years in the classroom, I saw that climate anxiety growing. My former colleagues in the classroom now tell me it's at an all-time high. And there's nothing that breaks my heart more than seeing a young person with a crushed spirit. There's no prosthetic for that. So we as adults have to make sure that we really inspire the next generation, that we are moving assertively to a cleaner and greener Nova Scotia and a cleaner and greener Canada. So I believe there's lots of points of alignment between our municipality, municipality I love, municipality I call home, and I believe we can act now to protect our most vulnerable and marginalized citizens. A couple things, though, I want to highlight. Nova Scotia, for quite some time, has had the strongest greenhouse gas emission targets. We continue to have that through the goals we've established through this new legislation. This new legislation is step one of a two-part process. The Department of Environment and Climate Change is actively developing the Climate Change Plan, which is tentatively to be released in the spring of 2022. And the objective of that Climate Change Plan is to clearly outline to Nova Scotians how we're going to attain the objectives and goals outlined in the environmental goals and climate change reduction plan. So I've received a number of briefings already on that climate change plan. I have to say there's a lot to be optimistic about in terms of what the province will be coming forward with in terms of the concrete actions we'll be taking to move the province forward. I truly believe that all Nova Scotians are going to benefit enormously over the next 10 years as we do a just transition to the clean and green economy. But we have to do this in a collaborative way. You have a lot to offer. I have a lot that I can learn from you as minister, and vice versa. So one of the key things I hope at this point that you're taking away is I'm a minister that wants to work with you. Many of you here have personal relationships with me. I want to cultivate those relationships within this unbelievable responsibility that I've been given by the Premier of Nova Scotia. And I want you to know that's not light on my shoulders. I think a lot of folks a few months ago had sort of seen me as the education person for the province, but I'm utterly thrilled to be where I am and to be able to work with so many stakeholders throughout the province in cleaning and greening our society and our economy. In the legislative session, we had a lot of discussions about the importance of getting off coal. And as I highlighted to you, it was one of the first things one of my oldest children said to me when I first got elected. Coming out of COP26, we all recognize, coal plants are some of our biggest emitters. We simply can't afford not to move on the direction that we've established in getting us off coal by 2030. And attaining that, the Atlantic Loop is going to be critical. The Eastern Energy Initiative. I want you to be aware that the Premier of Nova Scotia, that Atlantic Loop is a top priority to the Premier in order for us to move to a clean, more renewable and affordable energy. The federal government's support and investment in our province is going to help make energy affordable. It's going to help ensure a safe, stable supply of clean, renewable energy for our province. And our zero-emission vehicle mandate will mean cost savings to Nova Scotians over the life of their vehicles and help us meet our emission reduction targets. Our plans for active transportation to increase accessibility for everyone in a community that will contribute to the environmental, social, and physical well-being of residents is a top priority and is one of the key goals outlined in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act. As a government, I want to be crystal clear. We want to support you. We want to support all municipalities. in addressing your climate change priorities and with creating greener communities. Quite frankly, as I said, when I say all hands on deck, it means all of us working together towards the common goals that we have, and there's so many of them. I want you to know we will continue to listen to municipalities when they say the current method of recycling printed paper and plastics is a burden. And I want you to know through the new piece of legislation, we are committed to consulting with you and all municipalities as we go to expand extended producer responsibility. As a matter of fact, Mr. Chair, if I can tell this story, even before I was appointed Minister of Environment and Climate Change, I recall a phone call from Councillor Mancini asking me about this. And so I commend all councillors throughout Nova Scotia for their advocacy on expanded EPR. Certainly in the 3 months I've been in this role, I've learned a lot about EPR, and I want you to know as a provincial government, we are committed to working with you and expanding that. So along those lines, I think we'd all recognize we need to think about waste as a resource. There has to be a paradigm shift when it comes to our thinking on that. And of course, you know, when we talk about EPR, this is all part of our reaching our solid waste disposal goal of no more than 300 kilograms per person by the year 2030. In our last piece of legislation, major piece of environmental legislation in 2007, Nova Scotia didn't meet its last solid waste disposal target, but I'm confident we can do this. At 400 kilograms per person now, we already have the best waste disposal rate in the country, and I know over the next decade, as we move to the target of 300 kilograms per person, I believe by working together we can achieve that. I'm optimistic for the future. I believe by working together we can achieve the HRM, the Nova Scotia of our dreams. We owe it to our kids and grandkids. There is having gone through, Halifax 2050, looking at the highlights of that, there are so many points of alignment between the province and HRM on this particular file. And anyone that knows me knows I want to get to work. Let's work together. And many of you have in the 4 years I've been an MLA, have been absolutely phenomenal in working with me while I was in opposition. Now that we're in government, I cannot wait to work with you. We have so many points of common values, our objectives are clear, and there's so much that we can attain together. So, as the department responsible for meeting our climate change goals, I can't wait to get to work. We are certainly getting to work each and every day. Certainly my senior leadership staff has me working hard every day, but I love the grind. I love the work. It's an absolute privilege to be in this position and working with such amazing people like yourself. So I want you to know in the weeks and months ahead, we'll be reaching out to you to collaborate, specifically when it comes to extended producer responsibility. And I think of what I've heard the mayor say over the years, time and time again, and I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this. It's it's amazing what we all can achieve when no one cares who gets the credit. And certainly for me, it's about empowering others and us working together towards a common goal, and these common goals are critical for us to achieve because we are at a pivotal moment in our history, and we have to ensure we achieve these objectives. So that's enough from me. I look forward to your comments and questions, and again, I want to thank you for inviting me to join you today.
Minister, thank you very much for your sharing with us your vision, and for me personally, glad to hear you, of course, EPR is front and center in your strategy. As I alluded to in my introduction to you, we are going through our budget process right now, and we're looking at identifying some of a possible increase in the tax to go towards our strategy, because the strategies are great, and I think we have one of the best strategies in North America, if not the world, when it comes from a municipality, but now we've got to put it to action, and so that doesn't come without its controversy, for sure. So thanks very much. So I have a number of my colleagues that wish to speak. First up from beautiful Eastern Shore, Councillor David Hensby, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to Halifax City Hall. Mr. Minister, it's great to see politicians from the provincial level here, not at election time. I'd also want to take the time to acknowledge an old colleague of mine, Reginald Rankin, the former Halifax County Councillor and Halifax Regional Councillor, is also in the audience today. Welcome back to City Hall there, Reg. Anyway, Mr. Minister, you have a large undertaking in regards to the Department of Environment and all the lofty goals we wish to achieve. But some of the things that I find aggravating are in our own backyards, and that's illegal dumping. And I think that we need to find a strategy, both provincially and municipally, to find ways to work with our community partners and volunteers and citizens out there to find ways of cleaning up this scourge of in our communities. Just the other day, I had an email from a constituent who picked up a pile of shingles off the side of the road and took them to the dump, and they charged $193. Wanted to know if she could get a rebate for it. And I said, I'm sorry, but we don't have a program municipally for that. But perhaps I should turn you on to the Department of Highways to look at that for a possible rebate. But it's just something that I find so frustrating. We have some community groups and organizations that want to do cleanups, but it takes time, effort, and labor. And sometimes that labor is not easy to get because of some of our rural communities are getting older, our younger people not available a lot. So I'd like to find ways that we can get engaged, through the cadet corps or the Boy Scouts or whatever the case may be in regards to getting some assistance out there to help clean up these illegal dumps. And when you have the time, I'd like to take a tour of my district's social and environmental issues for your attention.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your question. And certainly, we're expecting an email from you very soon to take a tour of your beautiful community. Your question is very important. And as a matter of fact, if you look at my mandate letter issued by the Premier, one of the mandates I have is to have a look at this issue. Specifically, it indicates in the mandate letter to bring forward a litter bug act. So it doesn't give a specific time as to when I need to bring that in. So in response to that, I've met with Divert Nova Scotia and had some discussions about as to why littering is still occurring. My understanding is a study is being conducted as to why littering is taking place. Before I would bring any piece of legislation forward related to illegal dumping, to littering, anything of that nature, I want to assure you and your colleagues extensive consultation and research would be done. And I do appreciate the question. It certainly came up in the legislature as well. Other provincial MLAs had questions surrounding this. So yes, it is part of my mandate to look at this, and certainly I'm more than willing to learn more about it and visit your community and get you to show me some of the key situations that you're seeing. I'm wondering if anyone from my senior leadership team wants to add any comments to that. We're good? Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Minister, if you're going to go on a tour with Councillor Hensby, I suggest you pack your lunch. Because it'll be a long tour and he'll probably won't pick up the tab, so pack your lunch. There. Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Next, my partner in crime on the, I believe, the best part of HRM, Dartmouth. So, Councillor Austin, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Minister, if you're going on a tour with Councillor Hensby, we all know well in this room, you better pack your wallet. The lunch will not be the expensive part of the trip. So thank you, Minister, for coming today. And your words off the front. I know you're well connected to youth, kids of your own, and your time as a teacher. The climate anxiety is real. What I've noticed in my own situation is it's no longer just youth who are feeling that. It's increasingly a sense of urgency throughout society. I know on my own part, there are days where it sometimes feels hard to be optimistic, and I really worry about the world that we are setting our kids and future generations up to inherit. So thank you for acknowledging that. And I think we're at this place where, it's at a show us, don't tell us sort of place. I think this is true of both province, federal, and municipal. agreeable on this issue. And so I think there are reasons for optimism. The fact, as you say, that the recent bill went through the House with all-party agreement. There's increasing, I think, convergence around this issue at all levels, is that we as a society, as a people, have to change our ways. So there are reasons for optimism. I have some specifics I want to ask you about, and I want to acknowledge these are ones that we see on the municipal side as things that we need from the province to help us meet our objectives. I'm sure as you start to roll out more details of the plan that you'll have asks of us, and I think that's how it should be in terms of collaborating together on it. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is where the building code amendments might fit into the climate change plan, because as we look at our Halifax plan, one of our largest emission sources are buildings, and we can't change anything in the code, right? The code is a provincial, something adopted at the provincial level. We can offer some incentives through density bonusing, but we can't actually mandate it. And every kind of day, month, year that goes by, we're building more buildings that we're increasing the stock that we're going to have to retrofit later on. And so I'm just wondering where that piece might fit in the plan, because it's something that we're bumping up against in terms of our limitations and what we actually need from the province to make our plan work.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I appreciate the question, and certainly with respect to your comments on climate anxiety, definitely as parents, we have to encourage our kids to be optimistic about tomorrow. But at the same time, you look at the realities. You see what's happened in British Columbia. You see what's happened in Cape Breton, and our kids are seeing these images, and it certainly rattles you, right? Knowing that how significant these storms are. So with respect to the building code amendments, as I've indicated, I've had a number of briefings thus far on the climate change plan. Certainly, this is why Nancy is here with me. So Nancy Rondo is the executive director of our climate change division, the subject matter expert. So I will ask Nancy if she can provide some commentary to Councillor Austin's question.
Sure, I can. So in terms of the building code, we are going to be adopting the federal code as soon as it comes out. I would note that the federal government is looking to further the carbon reduction goals in the code. So in their platform, they talked about a zero carbon code by 2025. Right now, we have signed an agreement with all provinces to adopt that federal code as soon as it comes in. The other part in the plan is around training and workforce development. We're going to need to really put a focus there to ensure that people have the skills to be able to build to these levels, and so that's a big part of the plan.
Thank you for that. That's awesome news. Because 2025 is, it's not that far away. So if we're heading for a net zero code by 2025, that's amazing. The other one I wanted to ask you folks about was the transportation side, because that's of course another huge source of emissions, and I think it's one that's probably, it's a challenge for all of us in terms of, we need to be promoting, it's transit, it's active transportation, and electrifying fleet. The municipality has a number of significant transportation plans, electrifying our transit system, and also a bus rapid transit plan that would put fast transit basically by the front door of up to, I think it's 125,000 people in the municipality, so a huge potential reach. It's an area that, as a province, we've never really had stable funding when it comes to transit in this province, and I'm just wondering where you folks might be in terms of that thought process, in terms of that provincial-federal collaboration for funding for transit infrastructure in the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor. And certainly, if you look at the piece of legislation we passed, 30% of vehicles, the goal is that 30% of them will be EVs by 2030. So that, I think, signals to Nova Scotians and our municipalities that this is something we take very, very seriously. Nancy, if you could maybe provide some commentary to the specifics of Councillor Austin.
Yeah, I think our focus provincially has been to facilitate and to help enable access to federal funding. So through the ISIP program, the infrastructure program, we've been able to leverage funding for the electric buses. And I think that's where our focus is on the electrification of the transit.
Okay, I think I will have to come back since I've run out of time here.
Yep, you can
Mr.
come
Chair.
back, Councillor. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Up next is the Deputy Mayor. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Minister, Honorable Minister, for being here today and bringing your team with you. As we were just talking about earlier, actually, I should preface this by saying I'm coming to you with these comments not only as a board member of the Halifax Water Commission, board member with Peggy's Cove Commission, as Mr. Farmer knows, and as we've discussed earlier about the need for some kind of storm surge mitigation. Great job in Peggy's Cove raising the road, recognizing the need for a breakwater, but those breakwaters are needed elsewhere, right? Not just in these smaller kind of communities. We do need to recognize that funding, is needed across municipalities. So I'm also here today as a board member of Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and we had a great session over the last couple of days working at how we are going to be working as municipal units with the provincial government and ticking off the list of all these things, EPR, for example, that you've talked about. But one of the things I just really want to hit home with you today is the lack of a provincial stormwater management policy. There is no program. HRM is doing the best that we can do with Halifax Water to mitigate and divert stormwater on municipal roads. But as you know, provincial roads outside, or in HRM, but outside that municipal boundary, do not have the same kind of program. And no other municipality across Nova Scotia has that kind of program. So, I recognize that it's all hands on deck, and thank you for that. And I do think that we can all agree that stormwater knows no boundary. It doesn't really matter to the stormwater whether or not you're on a municipal road or provincial road. At the end of the day, what we've seen in Cape Breton and in British Columbia and in parts of Europe, it's great to address the GHGs, but if your town is underwater, your roads and rail lines are underwater, and you haven't done a good job to mitigate that stormwater, there goes the health and wellness of your communities and the economic wellness of communities as well. So I'm really interested to find out where the province sits at recognizing the disparity that we currently have with HRM residents and commercial property owners as well, who are paying this so-called ditch tax because they live on a municipal road. But at the same time, their neighbors who are on a provincial road, they don't have to pay that. It's covered in their income taxes. And I think that we have to have an honest discussion about what we are going to do with stormwater infrastructure. Because what we have right now isn't going to cut it, as we saw this last week in Cape Breton. So I look forward to your answer. Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You've certainly added to my to-do list with this question. I want you to know our government will take what you've highlighted under advisement. And this, it highlights also, Deputy Mayor, why these meetings are so important. So I can hear these concerns. I think we all appreciate as elected officials the multitude of issues that come at us. And so my senior leadership will be taking this under advisement and having some discussions. And I suspect you and I will be chatting again about this. Nancy, is there anything further that you could add to her question?
That the climate plan definitely will be addressing adaptation. It's definitely a key element of a climate plan. What the specifics will be at this point, I think they're still being defined, and so we'll definitely be engaging further on this.
That's good to hear, because as you know, there's mitigation, adaptation, or suffering, right? Those are our three choices. And certainly would love to have you up to St. Margaret's Bay and tour you around, and you can see the situation. I mean, right now, we've got the Department of Environment and Climate Change has recommended putting up sandbags in Bootlears Point. And that's what they're doing this week, and it's just not enough. It's not going to cut it. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Go ahead. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You know, I have one job up here, and that is the order of speakers, and I messed it up already. My apologies, Councillor Cuddle. I jumped. My fear of the new Deputy Mayor has got me, got me all excited. I saw her name on the board. I apologize, Councillor. You have the floor, Councillor Cuddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister Hellman, for coming here today. I mean, this is exactly what we need, is to see cooperation and collaboration between all levels of government in, facing the immense challenges we have ahead of us in regards to climate change. So, yeah, some of the questions I have, like one is about energy, and you talked about the Atlantic Loop, and increasing our source of renewable energy. But in that, home heating is probably one of the biggest sources, right up there with electric vehicles, or probably even more so than vehicles, is heating. And so much of our province is dependent on oil for heating. And one of the things I think would be critically important would be having a program to incentivize people electrifying their home heating systems. The other piece, of course, is transit, and we have been doing a lot of work here at HRM on electrifying our fleet, putting in bus rapid transit, promoting more transit use. It is an uphill battle. It's culturally, it's not a widely used concept, public transit, so we have a lot of work to do with that. But also, I think we need to look at our transit on an interprovincial scale, so not just within our municipality, but between municipalities and across our province as a whole, to give people options and alternatives to using cars. So that is something I think would be really exciting to see. Of course, the extended producer responsibility, happy to see that. That's just not, helps us with managing our waste, but also, shows that we're taking responsibility for it and considering those communities that host landfills. But my last point is about the Coastal Protection Act. And, we are Canada's ocean playground. My district, District 11, it goes from Purcell's Cove all the way to Pawleys Cove. I have a tremendous number of small coastal communities. And the Coastal Protection Act, I'm just wondering, where are we on that? How's that, when can we expect it to be passed? How does that fit in relationship to your climate action plan? And, I know for us here at the municipality, we're waiting for that act to help inform our own policies around regulating land use on coastal communities. Right now, when I drive around, and I'd be happy to take you on a tour too, and then I could pass the baton over there to Pam, between Pawleys Cove and Peggy's Cove. Pam and Patty, it's like, be like P4. We have all these communities that it's not just infrastructure, but it could be more than that. One of the communities I've been reading up, or cities or areas I've been reading up on, is Norfolk, Virginia. And a lot of the progressive policies that they've put in place in helping to mitigate future issues around sea level rise. And so I think we just can't be thinking about this at a municipal level. We really need to be thinking about this at a provincial level. And yeah, so that is something I would really like to hear some more about.
Well, to my colleagues here, I think I'll be getting out of the office quite a bit with all these invitations. So absolutely, I'd love to visit your community. Councillor, thank you for your questions and analysis. A lot to unpackage there. Let's start with energy and specifically home heating. Absolutely. I mean, we need to have a very open, upfront conversation in this province about a just transition. We have 200,000 Nova Scotians that are still on oil. And we now need to continue to work aggressively to help those Nova Scotians get onto cleaner, renewable forms of energy. And Nancy can get into some specifics in terms of what the province has done thus far and what our plans are moving forward when it comes to energy. And then we'll get to transit.
Yeah, okay.
Retrofitting homes is going to be a big part of the plan, and there'll also be hopefully a big focus on equity, so ensuring that those who are low income can access the program, so expanding home warming program, for instance. I think, that is going to be a key aspect of the plan, and also a great job creator across the province. I think, it's, those are the types of things that we're looking at on that front.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. And certainly, equity, I want you to know that the principles of equity are built into every one of the goals. It's mandated by law that every department, as they go to implement these goals for Nova Scotia, the equity lens has to be used. So there's a lot of work to do on that. There's a lot of opportunity and innovation taking place in terms of renewables. Certainly, my deputy here as Economic Development Minister has certainly engaged in a lot of conversations about those opportunities. And perhaps, Deputy, you could maybe just highlight a couple things in terms of the innovation and opportunities when it comes to renewables in the energy sector that you're seeing as a Deputy Minister.
Yeah, so, renewable energy is important to us from a environmental perspective, obviously, but increasingly, it's important to businesses that are making decisions about investments that they're making in the province or locating in the province as well. So that clean supply of energy is important to international organizations who are considering Nova Scotia as a destination. We've had some discussions with some really interesting organizations that are considering Nova Scotia as a place to do business, and we'll continue to have those discussions. On a larger scale, when we think about environmental responsibility and its role in economic development, more and more they're dovetailing. A company doesn't necessarily need to be high-minded about environmental stewardship to see their self-interest in environmental stewardship. And there's lots of examples of consumer demand requiring successful organizations to play a more significant role, and also downstream buyers. So if you're a supplier, it may very well be that the ultimate purchaser of your product, if you're providing components, is going to insist that you meet a certain environmental standard. And we've talked to lots of organizations in the province who are seeing that as well. So there's a nice organic drive toward increased sustainability across the piece, but the foundation of it, of course, is sustainable energy.
And then, I hope that gives some clarity on that question. And then with respect to transit, well, first of all, let me say I commend HRM for the work you've done thus far with electrification. It's phenomenal work that you're doing. In the new piece of legislation, EGCRA, there is a specific goal for active transportation. I believe the number was 65% of our communities by 2030 need to have active transportation infrastructure. So this is going to require the province. Wow, a lot of work needs to be done on that. So, Nancy, can you provide some more specifics in terms of the transit when it comes to the climate change plan?
So transit specifically, really, I think we're focusing on electrification. I think that's going to be a key component. I think that's about all I can say at this point. I'm sorry, I don't have a whole lot further to add on that one.
And then, Councillor, with respect to EPR, I met with Amanda McDougall on Zoom and a few other councillors a couple weeks ago, and I indicated to them, municipal units can expect me on their doorstep in the weeks and months ahead as we begin our consultations for expanded EPR. So there'll be a lot of discussions we'll be having, not only with our municipality here, but throughout the province. And I'm really looking forward to those consultations. I mean, every one of these goals I'm really excited about, but the most, in terms of, me getting on the road and working with municipalities, this will be one of the key ones that you can expect to see me out there in the province and here in HRM discussing EPR. So I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, just the coastal protection
yes,
would be the main one.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I apologize that we're well trained here, that we only have 5 minutes, so we squeeze everything in.
So the regulations.
For the barrage.
Yep. So we've completed consultations on the regulations for the Coastal Protection Act. A lot of work has gone into that. I believe what we've heard report will be published fairly soon. Do we have a timeline as to when that will go public at this time, Deputy? Okay, so the next couple months, we should have what we heard report. So we're working on those regulations, and obviously once those regulations are completed, they'll be made public to Nova Scotians. But it's actively being worked on within the department.
Thank you, Councillor Cuttle.
Thank you.
Next, Mayor Savage, you have the floor, sir.
Am I good? Okay. Thank you very much. Minister, it's great to see you. And, you know, it's great to see so many councillors at a committee meeting. There's 11 of us, 12 of you, and count both of the Hensbys who are here with us. I would offer to take you on a tour of my neighborhood, but you and I live 20 houses apart, so I think you know it pretty well, and we get to see each other quite a lot anyway out and about. You and I have been on the same circuit for the last few weeks, including you joining us last night for the volunteer awards, which we appreciate, I know, as council. Shannon Meadema is with us, I think. I'm not sure if you've met Shannon. Some of your folks would have met Shannon, I'm sure. Shannon's right behind you there, Minister, waving at you. She is one of the key, I would say one of the key people in Canada in terms of the work on climate change, and I think she's worked very closely with the province, and she is in many ways the architect of Halifax, which Council endorsed in 2020. And as you know, I was at COP26 a few weeks ago, and you and I are going to talk about that some more, but one of the things I was asked a lot about was Halifax and what were the keys to coming up with a successful climate change policy. And I think one of the keys is we talked in the composition of this plan to the Ecology Action Centre, but we also talked to the social workers of Nova Scotia. And this coming together of equity and sustainability is going to be really, really important. So we're proud of that work, and I certainly encourage you to continue, and your officials to continue the discussions with Shannon as well as with us. One of the things in your mandate letter was something along the lines of working to secure federal money, working with partners like municipalities, First Nations, and others. You know, we've had some success in the last number of years. The first phase of our electrification of transit, which Sam and others have talked about, I think 60 buses and the transit garage out at Ragged Lake was funded 3 ways. We couldn't do it on our own. The All Ages and Abilities Bike Network, a $25 million project, was, I think we only put $4.25 million into that. It's the age-old thing that you may have heard about. Municipalities own 60% of the infrastructure. We're responsible for 60% of the infrastructure, but we only collect less than 10% of the taxes. So this relationship you're talking about, the sort of symbiosis between your plans and the act that you've introduced along with Halifax, I think is really going to be important to us. I sometimes say it's amazing what you can get done if you don't care who gets the credit. I don't know if you've heard that before. But it's really, it's a really key thing for us. So it's really important for us to have a willing partner in the province, and I know that you'll be a willing partner. We'll be straight with each other about what we can do and what we can't do. And I hope that specifically in terms of the electrification of our transit, which you're not in a position to commit to now, but we have a lot more that we have to do. And our goal is to do it more quickly than we originally intended. There is a payback to it, of course, as well. And but there is an upfront cost, and that's what we'll be debating around this chamber for the next 4 months. So I just want to thank you for coming to the committee. I don't think it happens that often. It's great to have the minister come and talk to us and talk about what you want to do, listen to what we want to do. You've obviously seen some of the stuff that we want to do. And I just want to wish you well in that role. I think you're well suited for it, and we look forward to partnering with you in the months and years ahead.
To me, Mr. Mayor, I really appreciate those comments. You and I go back a long way. I can remember.
Not that long.
Well, I can remember you coming to visit my classroom when I still had hair in those days, and
that was you?
how much? Yeah, it was. Believe it or not, that was me, a younger Tim Hallman. But my students always so enjoyed your take on public life and public policy, and. Look, I want to work with all of you. You know, I see you as partners. The goals that have been established in Halifax, the goals that have been established provincially. Now more than ever, that spirit of collaboration is critical, and certainly within this lane, within my leadership style, please know you'll have a willing partner. We may not always agree, but anyone that knows me, look, I got big ears. I can listen. I can listen really, really well, and I can really try to find that common ground with you, because to me that's what good public policy is all about, the art of the possible. And so I see so many points of convergence here in terms of what you've outlined as a municipal unit, in terms of what the province has. We have great, strong personal relationships going into this. And our kids are watching, our grandkids are watching, and they expect big things from us. And so I so look forward to working with all of you. Do I have all the answers? No, but I certainly have a willingness to work with you to get answers, to get the best public policy for our municipality, our province, and our country. So please know there's a spirit, a willingness to work with you. I see you as partners in the great work that we have before us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next is Councillor Gammon. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Wow, it's always a hard act to follow the mayor. I don't know. Minister Holman, thank you so very much for your presentation, for being here, but also for being so available. We got to meet last week, had a beautiful conversation. It was all good. See you again last night. And so when you're finished with the coastal part of HRM, I have the agricultural belt, Great Valley come to, right? So we could wait till like the spring or the summer or even the fall for the colors, whatever you want. Well, that'd be good. Of all of the things that we've talked up, just to add to them, because I know that there's so many, and it's so nice to hear about the collaborative effort, because you're right, everything is done better together. The beautiful group in Dartmouth, right? My buddies. One of the things that happened this summer or spring, early spring, was around the blue-green algae and the protection of our lakes. And so it's been a big focus for us as well. And one of the things that was a struggle, I believe, was a little bit about knowing how we educate the public on who takes care of our lakes, how do we protect our lakes, what is the communication path when something happens, where do people go and find good information. Sometimes it was municipal, sometimes it was provincial. So if we could do a little bit more work around protection of our lakes would be great. And on that same theme, we've got a lot of developments happening, and when we've got all this growth happening close to around our lakes, then development agreements, we've got people doing wastewater treatment plants, effluent is going into the lakes, people are finding it a mystery. How do we find out? Because the province approves it, but it's not public. So thinking about that connection, when we're talking about development agreements, what is HRM's responsibility to that? What is the province's responsibility when it comes to protection of our environment? How they interconnect and how the public is made aware and educated. I think we could do some more work on that. And then my third point maybe would just be a little bit around that active transportation plan and thinking about rural Nova Scotia, rural HRM, and where do they fit within active transportation? How are they recognized in the provincial and in a municipal plan? That's my shopping list. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And the points you raise are so critical, not only for me on a local level, but also on a provincial level. And being an MLA from the City of Lakes, I mean, when you talk about, the protection of our lakes, I mean, I know for so many how critical this is. Obviously, the 9,000 lakes we have in Nova Scotia are, as you know, a priority for every community. But you're absolutely correct, and that's why I had it put into the new piece of legislation. One of the goals is looking at, a new lake strategy, a water strategy. The evidence of blue-green algae, it's another symptom of climate change, and certainly for those of us in Dartmouth, Cole Harbour, Fall River, Waverly. We're seeing evidence of this. You just wait for it, right? I know my staff in Dartmouth East are just waiting for the calls to come in by the time we get to late spring regarding blue-green algae. So I want you to know there is a commitment on my part as minister for us to work together on that. You talk about educating the public, absolutely. I want you to know it's not lost on me the demands that are on local councillors when it comes to that issues. In particular, what happened this summer at Grand Lake and the pressures that were on there. And I know our department was quite responsive to providing support. So it is absolutely a priority for me personally, and that's why it's in the Environmental Goals and Climate Change Reduction Act that as we work, we develop a greater lake strategy. Obviously, my thinking is I always prefer to see local community groups taking ownership of the lakes. Certainly, I can envision the role of the province, being support in that regard. But it is a conversation we will be having, a formal conversation in terms of, what the strategy needs to be when it comes to the protection of our lakes. I hear it from my residents that I'm accountable to as an MLA, and I certainly hear it as a minister. And Ms. Lori Roberts is our Executive Director of Policy. I'm wondering if there's any further details you could add with respect to blue-green algae and protection of our lakes.
Sure. Thank you, Minister. You really hit on all the right points there in talking about in dealing with blue-green algae. You really need to focus on education, protection, getting information out. People need to know where to call and where to look, and how to understand what's happening in their lakes. As a department that has, responsibility for regulating both, on-site septic systems and also municipal systems, and has we've got a very strong water team in our department, and blue-green algae at a certain time of year becomes a hot topic for us every single year. No question, we always know exactly, roughly, when it's going to come. And one of the things I would say is that our water team is one of the groups in the department that has a lot of conversation with municipalities across the province, and it's been and will continue to be a priority for us to figure out how our roles mesh together to address blue-green algae and the safety issues that come up along with that every year.
And then I believe you had a question with respect to active transportation, rural active transportation. And I appreciate the question. Certainly, being an MLA and working with many, many others, I hear that from my rural MLA colleagues quite often. Certainly, I want you to know, built into that piece of legislation is, the goal of working with our communities to have active transportation. 65% of our communities are to have active transportation infrastructure. These are going to be ongoing conversations, and I can tell you this, the reality of this new piece of legislation is starting to make the impact throughout government now, and people starting to realize within the provincial government just how impactful this piece of legislation is going to be. And I know my colleague, Deputy Farmer, is having a lot of conversations at the deputy level, which is a critical component, as you know, in the infrastructure of any provincial government. So to answer your question directly, lots of ongoing conversations about how we're going to be supporting rural Nova Scotia, and I know certainly knowing the Premier fairly well, that is a top priority to the Premier of this province, ensuring rural Nova Scotia's voice is heard and ensuring rural Nova Scotia, our rural communities have access to all these important changes that are going to be coming forward in the province.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor, thank you very much for bringing up the lakes. As the minister knows, and in District 6, where he lives and I live, we have 3 lakes that District 1, District 5, District 6 that are extremely important to residents of Dartmouth, Bannock and Micmac and Lake Charles, and we've had our challenges. We do have coming up the World Championships on beautiful Lake Bannock coming up next summer, and we're once again bringing the world to Dartmouth and HRM. And you talked about also needing the residents and the citizens to participate when it comes to the lakes across the province. So one of my motions was to reintroduce the water monitoring program, and that involves getting testing kits out to our residents that live around these lakes, not only those 3 lakes I mentioned, but many of our lakes throughout the municipality. So it is a joint effort, a team effort. So thank you, Councillor, for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Up next is the Vice Chair of this committee, Councillor Morris. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, very much for being with us today and bringing your whole team. It means a lot that you're here. And it's very encouraging to hear what you've talked about, and you've addressed a lot of my concerns through your responses to the other councillors. I just have 2 questions. I'm the parent of a teenager who I think has some climate anxiety, and I'm wondering if you would consider, as part of your plan, introducing a more extensive climate curriculum in Nova Scotia. And my other question is what you see as the main thing HRM Council could do to support your climate plan at the provincial level. Thank you.
I really appreciate your questions. It brings me back to I love the file that I get to work with, but my first passion is education. So thank you for the question. One of the goals in the new piece of legislation is mandating that the Department of Education or Childhood Development has to develop a more robust, comprehensive, in-depth explanation of climate change to our students. I know I have met early on, even before the bill went to the legislature. I met with the Minister of Education and the Deputy Minister, and there is alignment there. The Minister of Education of this province is a very, very, very strong environmentalist. So you have alignment there, and there is ongoing work taking place within the department. And I believe, Deputy, you had some conversations very recently with the Deputy Minister of Education. So there's a lot of conversations going on in terms of the curriculum development with that. And then, of course, with respect, like to climate anxiety, I agree with you. I mean, being upfront with our kids as to the changes that are taking place, the steps being taken by our jurisdiction and jurisdictions throughout Canada and the federal government to mitigate and adapt is critical. We know just to alleviate anxiety, talking is so critical, and being upfront with our kids and being realistic with them. But I also put forward the notion, and this is my 15 years of being a classroom teacher, how critical it is to convey the optimism as well. And my optimism has been renewed in the 3 months in this position, just seeing the great innovation that's being worked on by the private sector, by government. So I think that needs to be conveyed as well. So to answer your question, lots of work being done within the Department of Education. And certainly with respect to HRM Council, look, as Mr. Chair knows, I mean, I love this. I enjoy this. This is as an elected official, I love the collaboration. So I guess the great thing we can do is to get to know each other. There's a willingness on my part to work with you, to visit your communities. I think the great thing is just being upfront with each other. And if I, as a minister, do something that you're not happy with, just let me know, and keep those channels of communication open, because it's a pivotal moment. We need to be upfront with each other. What we're working on here is, I mean, we're talking about humanity being able to move forward, and that's not lost on me. The burden of that responsibility as minister, and I think for all of us in elected life, we know what's in front of us. So I think the best thing for us is to keep having these discussions, and again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you here today, and we'll be having many more discussions, no doubt.
I hope so. Thank you very much. It's been a great dialogue.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, how old is your daughter?
And I agree with what you're saying. It's very important that optimism comes from action and seeing change and actually having an impact. And so I think one thing my daughter does is get involved in organizing some of the climate protests. So you may see her out there one of these days circling the legislature, but it's good for us and good for her.
You know, and I asked about your daughter, and we've chatted about this before, Councillor, you know, that climate anxiety is real. And it's real not only for the youth, but in particular the youth, for sure. So thank you. And we'll make sure if when she does go down to Province House to protest, that you'll check her bag before you go down, and I'm sure. Thank you, Councillor. Next, for a second time around, Councillor Austin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for all the good questions and the good answers. I was glad to hear lakes come up, something, of course, near and dear to me. I just put in the plug. At some point, we need to do a show and tell at Little Albro Lake, where we have a different sort of issue there, where it's invasive species, right? And I think there's room for collaboration there. The federal code, as I've been sitting here thinking back on the answer on that, you know, if the federal piece in 2025 doesn't say net zero, I would encourage your department, you can go further than the federal code. You can, you know, because it's adopted at a provincial level. So if the federal code doesn't quite get us there, I would encourage you folks to, you know, you make Nova Scotia the leader, and we can surpass it if they don't quite, in the end, deliver on it. I hope they do. It sounds like they will, but if they don't, that would be my encouragement. I wanted to acknowledge something that you folks have done that is exceedingly important and helpful to us, you know, to put something really positive in the mix, and that's your Green Choice program, where it opens up the potential. It hasn't yet come to council for us, but the ability for us to buy renewable energy, to go out and procure new renewable energy, I think that will be very important for our climate change goals, because we cannot get to net zero operations without that. So thank you for that. And I wanted to circle back to transportation. And if I can I'll just be very, very blunt, if I may. You know, this is not a criticism of your government. This has been just the way things have operated in Nova Scotia throughout time, through all governments. You know, public transit has always been seen as a municipal responsibility and something that the municipalities provide. When there's been funding for public transit, it has come in the form of typically shiny one-off. So like I think about the original Portland Hills Metro Link, right? That got all government involved into funding that. We've never really had a strong provincial commitment towards funding transit. You know, we're in interesting times, and I think now more than ever, it's time to move that paradigm, because we can do a lot as a municipality with transit, and we have, but we can do more with funding. And every dollar that you put into transit is a dollar that we will use to get cars off the road, right? To take away those greenhouse gas emissions. And, you know, an electric car is great, but the best option is to have people taking transit using active transportation. And so, you know, to circle back, the electrification we've hit upon, we have that bus rapid transit plan, and I guess I'll implore you that, you know, as these pieces come up, you know, we have opportunities with the federal government through the PTIF and whatnot. There has been somewhat, I would see, as provincial reluctance on that, because it is outside the traditional norm. Would be, as these things come up, you know, come to the table with your third, right? We will do wonderful things together, and we will do so much more if we have that full and active participation from the provincial government on it. So I would leave that with you. I don't know if there's anything there you want to respond to or not, because I know it was a bit more of a pitch rather than a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I really appreciate you being upfront, and, you know, especially when it comes to transportation. And I mean, these are things I need to know. These are things I need to be aware of. I've been on the job 3 months, and I've learned a lot, but I still have a lot to learn. And you know, being aware of you know, you know, how you feel, how things have evolved when it comes to transportation, and no doubt many others feel that way on HRM Council. So keeping that channel of communication open is critical, and please know what you've conveyed will be taken under advisement. Some specifics that you outlined there, I'm wondering if Nancy could provide some commentary or analysis.
So It's not really my area of expertise. It's obviously a municipal issue. So I think those are discussions that are best left with the folks that are in the know on that topic. But we're obviously very, very supportive of electrification and want to facilitate those conversations and to further investments there.
Yeah, and just to your point, Councillor Austin, I mean, obviously, getting cars off the road, huge emitter, right? And we know in order to achieve these objectives, we need to do some bold moves here. And when I talk about innovation and opportunity, the convergence of that, I mean that within government as well. And that's why I locked this into law, right? We've got to get these things done. When Nancy talks about electrification, it is a legal mandate of the government to get moving on this. And in the previous Environmental Goals and Sustainable Prosperity Act, 19 of the 25 goals, or was it 16? 19 of the 25 goals were attained. And I believe we can do even better with the EGCRA piece of legislation, but it requires a lot of work and listening to the ideas that are being put out there by folks like yourself.
Thank you, if I may, just, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for that, and I appreciate the passion that you're bringing to this and that you came here today to talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Deputy Mayor, for the second time around, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I think our theme today is collective action, right? Like just being able to work together to move important things forward. I just want to preface what I'm about to say by sort of positioning us in Atlantic Canada's largest urban centre with a land mass of Prince Edward Island. Right? Like that's really, really important for us to remember. We border Hants County, Colchester, Pictou, Guysborough, Lunenburg. And so what I want to talk to you today is, I just want to raise the point about the parks and protected areas. And, as Councillor Austin just mentioned, just to give you kudos. Thank you so much for going back out to the public to talk about protected areas. I think we all heard the sigh of relief when it was announced that Owl's Head was not going to be golf courses. That was, oh, thank goodness, right? We need to protect these areas. And so I just want to implore you to think about the mainland moose. They need wildlife corridors. It's great to have, Westover, Five Bridges, Upper Tantallon Provincial Park, Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes, Ingram River, and have all these wilderness areas. But how is that mainland moose going to get from one area to the next? We have seen evidence in the St. Margaret's Bay area of mainland moose. We know that they're in Five Bridges. We've got less than 100 left in this province. We need to be able to connect those wilderness areas better. And speaking of which, we're very pleased that Parks Canada is working with us to look at an urban protected park here in Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes. But that Highway 113 would cut that entire wildlife corridor for the mainland moose to get from Westover and Five Bridges up to Ingram River and to the Panook wilderness area. So, I think we need to take a step back and think about where are these creatures, where are these animals going? As you mentioned, Mr. Minister, we have to think about humanity moving forward, and that includes all of those creatures, and animals that live in the wilderness. So I did want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing for our protected areas. But this plan goes back to 2013, and I am hopeful that it will be looking at wildlife corridors, because currently it does not. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I see no others on the board. So, I've heard today, we've heard about willing partners, collaboration, cooperation, collective action, and that's really exciting. And so as you can see, and I want to thank my colleagues for the outstanding questions, and you can see willing partners here for sure. And I'm sure we're going to see this with our new task force that the Premier's brought forward also. You knew I had to bring it up at least once, and I'm hoping that we're going to have the same kind of collaboration. I'm sure that we will. It's amazing when we look at politics and different orders of government and collaborating. We even saw it in the federal government yesterday. which was amazing to me with Bill C-4 and the ban on conversion therapy, and all parties came together, everybody, and so that's it means there's hope, right? It truly does, and I see that with this government also, and there's a lot of topics, and not only environment, but for us, environment is very dear. And Mr. I'm pleased to hear you talk about electric vehicles and getting off cold and EPR and Litter Bug Act and legal dumping and the lake strategy, which is dear to our hearts, of course, particularly in Dartmouth. So I want to thank you and thank your team, and again, I want to thank my colleagues, and we hopefully will have you come back again. I know that, and for those of you that may not be aware of this, the minister is coming next week to meet with my colleagues across the province with regional chairs. I don't think a minister has ever come to a meeting before and specifically talk about EPR. And so the province, the other municipalities are all on board with EPR. And, I look at sitting down with our previous minister, his dad being in the room, when Ian Rankin was the Minister of Environment, and he sat in Halifax Hall, the same meeting we'll be sitting at next week downstairs, and he said to us when it came to the single-use plastic bag ban, if all the municipalities are on board, he's prepared to go forward, and he did. And that work was started with Minister Rankin and following up with the next ministers to do so, and I know that's part of you and your team too. So, Minister, thank you very much. I hope to see you and your family at Shuby Park for the tree lighting on Sunday. And maybe a round of applause for the Minister. Thank you very much. Great, Minister, thank you very much. You're welcome to stay. You can go. Since Councillor Hensby is not here, make sure you have somebody ride shotgun with you when you go with Councillor Hensby. That's all I suggest. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. All right, folks, let's move on with the rest of the agenda. Number 11, information items brought forward. There are none. We now come to reports and discussions. 12.1 staff, 12.11 Environment Sustainability Standing Committee 2022 meeting schedule motion. Would someone like to put that on the floor? Councillor Cleary, go ahead.
I'd be happy to move that the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee approve the proposed 2022 Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee meeting schedule as outlined in the staff memorandum. I do have, Mr. Chair, just a question. I was looking at the calendar for the year, and I noticed the January 13th meeting. There is in our calendar a ComStat presentation in Dartmouth at 2:30. So if there are any councillors that would be going to that, they would have a conflict there between our meeting and that ComStat meeting.
So I may, Madam Clerk, suggest that we just have that noted as we go to agenda review and see where we are with the agenda on that, and we'll take note of that, and then maybe we'll do a roll call to see who is going to that and do we have to schedule it. Yeah, thank you. Anything further on that? And so all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor? Anyone opposed? We now have a schedule for next year. 13 is motions. I see none. We do have to go into camera, but I'm going to suggest, and I should have done this earlier, but I ask for your indulgence, that we have no added items and no notice of motions, but I would suggest we go with public participation first, and then, if that's okay with everybody, and then we'll go into in camera if that's the case, right? So it's time for public participation. Let's see here. Any member of the public who has registered with the clerk's office on this matter will be given 5 minutes to address the topic. When I call your name, you may come to the microphone if you're here in the room, and if I call your name and you're on the phone, you may unmute and speak at that time. So the first, let's see, the first person on the list is John Costanton. John, I see you're in the room. Yeah, John, welcome. Come on down, sir. Whatever, the middle is fine, sir. And if you have 5 minutes, the clerk will remind you when you have 30 seconds rather, the remaining, and you just push the button in front of you, and then the floor, we ask you to direct your comments to the chair and keep your comments respectful, and we look forward to those comments. Thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Is that it?
Yep,
good stuff.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you. Good day, members of the ECC, Deputy Mayor, other councillors, and HRM staff, public, anybody that's on remote. Try and get everybody in. I'll try and zip through this as fast as possible. I was really happy to hear about EPR being on the agenda, and that we have 2 items that go to the Otter Lake landfall right now that are textiles. They used to call it fibers back in 1995, but it's textiles today. And the what they call non-recyclable plastics, but they have value, and they should not be going to the landfill at all. So if we could get all plastics banned from the landfill and textiles, that would be a big benefit. And EPR should be the thing that actually takes the load off the public and the municipalities back to pay for the processing of those items. EPR is the way to go. The other one was COP26, and that's methane, right? Canada's big commit was to reduce 30% of their 2020 by 2030. And those levels have to go down, and 18% in the US is landfills. That their 18% of their methane comes from landfills, and I'd be surprised if Canada's much different. Right now we have a WSF, and there's a lot of talk about it. It only biodegrades the material for 21 days, and it only does that because it was supposed to go for compost. But there's the ability to biodegrade that for much longer period of time. There's 8 empty bays in there that haven't been used for years. And the guideline was inert material and biostabilized material going into the landfill. And right now it's partially biostabilized material going into the landfill. And that should change. So I'll leave it at that. I have some requests, and that, of course, it's the FEP and is the gatekeeper, and we need to have that there. You know, everyone thinks it was supposed to be scaled down. Scaled down was because there was supposed to be more than one FEP in the original program. A lot of people don't know about it. It's never ever talked about. But if people read what the thing was, when they talked about scaling down, it was scaling down the other tertiary FEP units. So I request the ECC to recommend HRM Council to continue honoring the existing 1999 contractual agreement between the HRM and the Halifax Waste Resource Society. I ask the ECC to recommend to HRM Council to work with NSE to ban all textiles and all plastic waste materials from going to the Otter Lake landfill, and that an extended producer responsibility program is put in place to handle those textiles and plastic materials. And my final ask is to recommend HRM Council to direct staff to have a pilot project carried out at Otter Lake to determine the biodegradable status of the waste stabilization facility's organic material output after extending the processing time beyond 21 days to the maximum period that's possible with that facility. And that's really important. I think that when it was first designed, and that they were thinking it was going to compost, and it's not. And so it should have been biostabilized for the last 20 years, and it hasn't been. I'll leave it like that, and please ask me questions.
Well done within the 5 minutes, John. The way that it works here, it's not a back and forth conversation, but colleagues can choose to take forward some of the items that you mentioned, and we also did get your correspondence on the same topic. I will acknowledge the EPR and talk about banning plastics. The federal government is in the process of banning all single-use plastic, and that'll help us in that direction. But thank you very much for coming forward. Truly appreciate it.
A garbage bag?
I believe from the federal government, and so again, those are things we can find out later rather than back and forth, John.
Yeah, but the single-use plastic, if it is a garbage bag, means that we need to get different containers in order to pick up our garbage.
That is part of, the staff is on board with that. We are looking at doing that, so good. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak come forward and speak? Do we have anybody online, Madam Clerk?
There's no one signed up to speak over phone, but please confirm by asking 3 times.
So for those of you that may or may not be online or in the gallery today, would anybody else like to come forward? Would anybody else like to come forward? Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I see that Councillor Gammon, do you have a question, a clarifying question for John?
I did, Mr. Chair, if that's okay.
If it's a clarifying question.
It is.
John, sorry, could we bring it back? Councillor Gammon has a clarifying question, so which is appropriate, which is permitted at the committee. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, John. Thank you for the presentation and for the emails and the information. My clarifying question is the pilot that you're suggesting, is the front-end processor a requirement for that pilot study to go forward?
Yes. In the original study, all they ever talk about is the front-end processor. The waste stabilization facility is actually an accessory item of the front-end processor. In other words, the front-end processor feeds the waste stabilization facility, so you can't have one without the other. The FEP could stand alone. It could be a standalone service in that if there was a way to somehow negate the need for the waste stabilization facility. But if we're going to have stabilized materials going into the landfill, you have to have a waste stabilization facility.
Okay. It was just the pilot project that you were suggesting at the end. That
Yes.
was the piece that I was curious about.
It would not change the operation of the landfill today with respect to the front-end processor. What it would do is, right now, when the material goes into a bay in the waste stabilization facility, it takes around 21 days for it to make its way through, and at that point in time, it has reached a partial stabilization state.
Okay.
They can take that material as it comes out and move it around, and put it in an empty bay that is available, and the whole process can start over again. So you could do it for 42 days or perhaps even 63. The potential is there. Back in 2017, MIR wanted to do a pilot project which was to turn a select section of the commercial, the ICI organics, that there was a fair, pure bit of it there. They wanted to turn that into compost. Okay. And it was put forward as a program, but it didn't make it through HRM's approval process, so it never happened. But in that program, they identified the process in order to move the stuff around and actually pass it through more than once to better stabilize it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, Councillor. So moving on to the agenda, we now, if I could have a motion to move into in-camera, please. Councillor Austin, so moved, second by Deputy Mayor. Thank you. We're going to move into in-camera. Thank you. Yeah, we're good to go. Thank you. So if the motions to the screens could, Councillor Clary, put the motion on the floor, please.
Did we leave in camera?
Pardon?
Did we leave in camera?
We did leave in camera.
I missed that.
We're out of the box. I move that the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee recommend Regional Council make appointments to the Regional Watersheds Advisory Board as discussed during the in-camera meeting in private session.
Have a seconder? Councillor Austin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We now have standing committee members. Fantastic. There are no added items, I believe. There are no notice of motions, looking around, we've done the public participation. So January 13 is the next proposed meeting, as identified by Councillor. Clearly, there may be a conflict, but at agenda review, we'll determine that. We do have a special meeting on December the 15th from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. And that's for the Halifax report. We're supposed to come at this committee. It wasn't going to be ready. It's a pretty thick report, so we wanted to give the committee a chance to actually read it also. So we're having that special meeting December 15th, 1 o'clock here in Chambers. So can we call for a dismissal meeting? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor. Question? Do you have a question? Yeah, well, it's a question by the Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to say that I may not be able to attend on December the 15th because I think I'm going to be in the air at that time, but I do wish you all well, and I certainly will watch the recording afterwards if I can't attend in person.
Will you be piloting the plane or just sitting in the plane?
Wouldn't that be nice? I will make a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, so adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Aruka, thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.